Hello friends, Clage back with another Punishing Grey Raven guide today, and many of you down in the comments for Helentine's guide were asking where the glaciation info was, what the glaciation equipment and rotations are, and as always I try to keep the elemental effects in their own separate guide because one, you all know my guides are too damn long to begin with, two, it tends to get lost in the sauce if I put the elemental effect information in the main guide as well because again they're just too big at that point. So for those of you that were waiting on glaciation information, here it is going to be because we finally got a glaciation warzone and now I could actually test things and figure out a proper team composition to go over for you all. So as with all the elemental effect guides, I will go over the updated team composition. I'll do a short combat demonstration to show how the glaciation effect works since it hasn't really been a meta choice in quite some time, so a little reprimer can't hurt. And then of course go over some rotation options to get you started on the glaciation warzone and get things off and running. Before we get into all the details on the team and the equipment and such, I do want to put out a little disclaimer here. Much like the other elemental effects, but even more so than usual when it comes to glaciation, this is a pretty restrictive team to build. There are not a lot of substitution options that work super well, and you are going to have to meet certain investment thresholds for this team to be one you actually want to run in a glaciation war zone. Thankfully, the big investment hurdles are both on free characters, those being Helentine herself, and then Wanshi Lucid Dreamer, since he is the only character who can really build and proc the glaciation effect in any kind of reasonable time. So having him built is going to be a requirement, and having Helentine built to at least double S3 or higher is basically going to be mandatory. The good news is that it's very easy to get Helentine to double S3 for free since she has the free copy in her story, the free copy by getting 50 shards out of the service shop, and then of course you can pick up more shards in either the Phantom Pain Cage shop or via the vouchers. But do note that, much like the other elemental effects, there is a barrier to entry and investment, and I'll go over that in more detail when we go over the team composition, but just note that if you cannot field these characters at these investments, I would not recommend making glaciation a priority for your building purposes right now, especially if you are a newer player and you're getting things up and running in Punishing Grey Raven. This is a elemental effect that does not come up often. It only shows up in Warzone almost always in the entropic section, where you have the option to pick the other element and or elemental effect as your choice for that week. And as far as I can remember, we have exactly one glaciation week boss, which is Mizuno, and she can be handled by just taking your favorite breaker and hitting the buttons. Let's be honest about what you do in Pain Cage for elemental effects that are annoying to do. So just wanted to get that disclaimer out of the way. I don't like not having good budget or low investment options for this, but the simple fact of the matter is just when it comes to the elemental effects, they require a little bit more investment if you want to have them be actually functional. And since they're so niche to have those come up in stages, you know, be mindful if you want to invest the resources to get this team online. But with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at the updated team composition here for the Glaciation squad moving forward. So the meta composition will consist of Helentine, who has re-enabled this effect to actually be one you want to use in the war zone. She will be acting as the leader and the lead DPS. She gets tons of time stop with her ability to spam both her ultimates, and she actively refreshes the duration of the glaciation effect, which makes it much less annoying to play and much less execution intensive because you don't have these tight windows where you have to get Selena's damage in before the glaciation effect runs out. So the effect and the team play has been greatly streamlined thanks to Helentine's arrival, and she will carry the damage on this team by a wide margin. So, again, double S3 and her signature weapon are going to kind of be the baseline if you want to run this team at all. If you do not have Helentine at that point yet, I do not recommend running Glaciation as it's currently built. Wanshi will act as the tank and mainly there for shred and building the glaciation effect itself. He will be doing very, very minimal damage for this team outside of the first few waves when you first bring him on the field to get the effect going. But his main purpose is going to be our QTE bot, providing the elemental shred for the glaciation effect, and then building and proccing the effect so that Helentine and Selena can drop damage during its duration. Selena moves over to the secondary DPS. She will basically be doing single ult rotation similar to how Glaciation worked in the past. She will come in, do a single ultimate to put off a big bomb chunk of damage as the effect is winding down, and once she does that, she will also terminate what's left of the glaciation effect, and then you basically restart with Wanshi and go from there. So this is your meta composition. Let's go over the build of each character, and then I'll talk about what few substitution options there are available. So let's go into the actual presets since it's easier to read for you all. So my setup that I have found that is getting me the best results after... You know what? I don't want to think about how many times I've run the Glaciation Warzone since yesterday, because that's literally all I've been doing, trying to get research and testing done to figure out what the best build was. But just note that it's a lot. I have a lot of attempts in Glaciation this week. But nonetheless, these are the builds that are getting me the best mileage so far in the Warzone. Helentine as the leader, I have her running 4-piece Chinjian, which is the generic Ice Shred set. It makes perfect sense for her to run this as the main DPS. We're going to be doing a ton of ice damage with the glaciation effect, and the extra shred is just a better option than any other 4-piece set she could put on for damage purposes. You'll want 2-piece Kadi to give her easier access to spamming her ultimates. That's how the real crux of this team works. Very similar to how Helentine works on the Lightning team. In fact, her rotations are near identical to what you do with the Lightning squad, so there's no reason to take Kadi off in this point. And then I have been getting the best results running 2-piece Darwin. Much like Kamui, Helentine goes through orbs like mad. She is 3-pinging constantly throughout her rotations, so the bonus from Darwin has been getting me far and away the best scores compared to doing something like 2-piece Einstein or 2-piece Guinevere. So it's very odd to have an amplifier on the team and not run anything in the neighborhood of Da Vinci, Guinevere, or Einstein, but in this case, she really is the DPS that is holding this new team together, and this is how I've been getting the best results, so I feel pretty confident in saying this is a safe memory build for you to do for the Glaciation squad. As for memory resonances on Helentine, pretty simple. Any 15 attack up top is fine, does not matter what the second stat is, and then you'll want to go a full 6 into signature on the bottom. The amplifier class skill just is not going to return the same damage as her signature, especially once you have her at double S3 with deadline timing. That enables her to do 3 full ult rotations per time on the field within the amplifier window, which is 6 total ultimates. And if you're gonna do 6 ultimates, yeah, there's no reason to not resonate signature on the bottom. So pretty straightforward options there, easy to keep up with. As for weapon resonances, in Helentine's case, deadline timing is actually your #1 priority for this character if you have a weapon reso to burn. Deadline timing enables her triple ult rotations at double S3 and higher. This is basically what you're going to want to shoot for if you want to get the most out of the Glaciation team. If you have extra weapon resonances, then of course Glorious Spear and Axial Ray are your next 2 options for the amplifier healing bonuses and the base 8% bonus from Axial Ray. But if you only have 1 reso to burn, it should absolutely go to deadline timing. Again, in this case, Helentine is much less acting as the normal amplifier role where she is buffing and supporting the team. She is the DPS by a comical margin on this team, so focus on the DPS stuff first, and DLT far and away gets the most out of it. I will say Glorious Spear and Axial Ray, I think I would always put over doing like Matrix Lightning, just because she is not in Matrix very often, in, and when she is, it's through her force proc of holding dodge, and by the time you get to her ultimates, Matrix Lightning is effectively not going to be doing much as she spams the various ultimates in her rotations. So I think Glorious Spear and Axial Ray are just better options if you have extra resonances to burn. But that is how I have Helentine set up. It's been working very well. Again, if you don't have, you know, a certain memory built or something, they're always cheap to get in the shop. But feel free to try other combinations for your harmonization memory. But Darwin kind of blew everything out of the water for me personally. For Wanshi, pretty straightforward memory build for him. We are going to do 4-piece list in his signature set. This gives him access to all his shred and extra ice damage, which is his main purpose on this team. And then 4-piece Da Vinci for being the QTE bot, harmonization on his weapons, so you get the full 4-tap on it. Wanshi is basically only going to be on field to build up the glaciation effect and immediately depart, so we are not concerned with his overall damage. As for his resonances, either the red orb or any 15 attack up top works fine. 15 attack is probably the better overall option just because then you're getting the extra attack on his QTEs, which are the things you mostly care about. But it's honestly 6 and 1/2 dozen to the other. That's why I haven't swapped this over. I had Da Vinci on a different set for him, and I just haven't bothered re-rolling the resonance because at the end of the day, it does not super matter. But red orb or 15 attack are both viable options for Wanshi on the Glaciation team. The bottom 6 class skill, you want the extra tank skill for the extra shred. That just provides the entire team more damage, and it's an easy choice since we are not worried about Wanshi trying to do a bunch of damage with his ultimate when he comes on the field. As for weapon resonances for Wanshi, Domain Deconstruction, of course, always priority number 1 on your tank, just for the extra shred. If you have extra resonances to burn, you can put on Matrix Lightning and Incandescence for the bonuses there. If you want some extra wiggle room, if you are at a lower investment rank, I would consider Deadline Timing just to make things a little easier. However, if you have the resonances for Deadline Timing, your Wanshi is probably at least triple S, and once he hits triple S, you do not need Deadline Timing, as the lower swap cooldown is going to make it a lot easier to just do a single rotation with him and get him off the field. But if you're lower invested and you do have weapon resonances on Wanshi, if he is below triple S, Deadline Timing is worth considering because you will need to spam more orbs to get through his rotations. Just something to consider. So, next, moving on to Selena. Best results I have gotten is doing 4-piece signature set Barana and 4-piece Kadi. We used to run the what is it? The Glaciation set called Clanova. We used to run 2-piece Clanova as the harmonization add-on when Selena was the lead DPS for this team. I have found it does not return as much damage as Kadi does, since she is basically just building up for one bomb ultimate and getting off the field. So I have been getting better results harmonizing Kadi. If you want to try the Clanova set, feel free to try it. See if you get better results with that, with wherever your investment is. But for my testing, Kadi came out ahead basically in every single situation that I ran. So I would recommend going with that. As for her resonances, they do not change. Top is 15 attack and 15 crit, because as a reminder, as a physical unit, you want to make sure you have the crit bonus on Selena for her top resonance. And this is the same set you run when you are doing her physical rotations right now, so make sure you actually get the right top resonance. It does matter for this character because his characters are demanding. It's just kind of how it is. As for the bottom, you don't need to change anything. Core passive remains the go-to option. It always sounds backwards telling you to resonate core passive on the memory when I'm telling you to run Kadi for the signature damage, but her core passive is a massive amount of her damage, and that has only been updated with her extra harmonization option, which, let's go ahead and talk about her weapon while we're on that subject. This guide is going to be assuming you have performed harmonization level 2 on Selena's weapon. She is our first character to get this new harmonization mechanic. I will do a guide on it. It's going to be a shorter guide, just kind of going over my thoughts on the mechanic more than how to do it, because it's pretty straightforward. But we did get the materials to do this new harmonization for free during the patch, so if you have not level 2 harmonied her weapon, I highly recommend doing so, especially before starting running this Glaciation team, as it does improve her overall rotations, at least if you're triple S. I think the lower rank rotations actually might have gotten a bit more clunky because of how this changes her weapon, but that's a discussion for the guide. But nonetheless, I'm going to assume you have done level 2 harmonization for this guide, so something to keep in mind as we go through. As for her weapon resonances, your options are pretty straightforward. She does not need deadline timing since she's doing single ult rotations, so prioritize your damage resonances, Afterglow, Matrix, Lightning, and Incandescence, whatever order you want to do. I would prioritize Afterglow, then Lightning, then Incandescence, but Lightning or Afterglow should be your go-to for the 1 or 2 slot. If you've got the full 3 trap, go for it. Get all 3 damage rezos on there and go from there. So that is the meta team setup. It's going to be pretty easy to run. Like I said, this element got much more friendly and much less annoying to get the best rotation out of. As for substitution options and investment levels you need to clear, if again, you do not have Helentine at least a double S3 with her signature weapon, I would focus on getting her built to that level before you run Glaciation. She cannot reliably do multiple ult rotations until she hits double S3 unless you are running deadline timing. And if you have a weapon resonance for deadline timing, I'm going to assume you've probably got her to at least double S3 as a free character. It wouldn't really make a lot of sense to do the other way around, but nonetheless, that is what I would consider the baseline for her. Wanshi just needs to be built with his signature weapon so you can harmonize the 2 sets. Ideally, since he is also a free unit that's been around for a while, you want him at triple S for the swap cooldown. However, I will have rotation alternatives if your Wanshi is below triple S and you have the extra 3 seconds to wait between swapping characters. Selena is the trickiest part of this recommendation for the team. If you have Selena below double S3 or you do not have her signature weapon, I would not recommend running Selena on the Glaciation team. Instead, what I would do is swap out Selena for a double amplifier setup. And the ideal one to do here is going to be Teddy Spectre. Teddy does ice damage. She does not have the Glaciation effect, but she does do ice damage. And she can come in and act as a secondary DPS while running a full support memory build, or at least a mostly support memory build. She will need her 4-piece signature set Joanna if you want to run her as the sub DPS. But this does allow you to run 4-piece Guinevere on the team and not sacrifice any of Helentine's damage. This is not going to be as strong as running Selena if she's built and invested enough to run on the team, but it is a perfectly fine budget substitute if you don't have Selena built or you don't want to invest heavily enough to get her to double S3 or higher, all of that good stuff. So Teddy is a perfectly fine replacement option. If you don't have Teddy, you can run your best well-built amplifier that's triple S or higher and just put a full support memory build on them. You will have to fill extra downtime both with Wanshi and your amplifier in this case, but it's an option to do so. I would not super recommend running a basic ice attacker like Alpha. The reason being, since she does not have the glaciation effect and it takes her a while to get to her ultimates, which is where most of her damage is, she is going to eat up too much field time that takes away from the actual glaciation damage and the effect. So if you have to replace Selena, I again would say Teddy is the main option you have available, but you can run a different amplifier and just run a double amplifier comp. But frankly, if you don't have Teddy to replace Selena, I would just hold off on building the Glaciation team currently, because again, it is a very rare element to come up in Warzone, and it is exceedingly rare in Pain Cage, so it is not something you need to prioritize. So that more or less goes over all of the team compositions. Again, I apologize that this is a somewhat investment-heavy team. That is just the nature of some of the elemental effects, and Glaciation in particular has very, very few options for substitutes. We don't have really any other good Glaciation stack builders aside from Wanshi, and the only reason this element is worth building again is because Helentine does so much damn damage with it. If she were not here to do these multiple ult rotations, the element would still kind of be DOA and just never worth running compared to whatever the other option you have in a given Warzone week is. So with all that discussed and out of the way, let's go ahead, jump over to training mode. I will give a reprimer on how the glaciation effect works, and we'll talk about the basics of how this team functions and keeps the effect going for maximum damage. All right, so let's do a quick reprimer on how the glaciation elemental effect works. I'm not going to give the utmost details on how the various damages are applied when glaciation is active, because to be perfectly honest with you, it is the most convoluted of the elemental effects and how it does its damage. But the general idea is that glaciation is very similar to like plasma beam and ignition, where you build up the effect with various stacks and then proc a timer by using a certain skill. For this team, it's going to be using Wanshi's ultimate. That will activate the glaciation timer, and the effect will become active and start doing its damage over time, as well as causing all skills that can do glaciation damage to convert to that damage type. So the general idea is very similar to something like plasma beam. You build up the effect, activate it, get your main DPS on the field to do their damage within the window while it is proccing the various ice spikes and ice explosions that go off as you use glaciation related skills. And then eventually, once the effect has expired, you rotate back to your stack builder, which again is Wanshi, build the stacks back up, reproc the effect, and repeat from there. So again, if you want to look at all the damage calculations of how glaciation works, it is in the skill tooltips. But to be perfectly honest, as someone who stares at the skill tooltips for multiple hours every month doing guides and such, glaciation is just going to hurt your head. All you need to know is once it's active, your skills do glaciation damage. You are causing various buildups of different types of stacks that will cause different types of glaciation damage to go off. Some of it is small overtime damage, some of it is large burst damage, but it all kind of just happens once you've procced the effect. So let's go over how this team kind of flows in practice, and then I will go over the various details and alterations that can happen based on your investment level over in the rotation section. But the general flow of the glaciation team is you're going to start with Selena on the field and then pass off to Wanshi immediately so that he doesn't have to burn extra orbs to get to his stance and start doing shots. Because if you swap Wanshi in and he is within range, he will throw one of his ice grenades. This allows him to have half of his core passive gauge already filled, so that means we only need a single 3-ping to get to him, get him into his stance and start building up the glaciation stack. So very similar to all of his rotations. You come on the field, build a 3-ping. Now we have full core passive. This means his gun draw stance is online, and we can start building glaciation stacks. Now, if you haven't played Wanshi in a while, or you've kind of forgotten how he works, if you go into the stance by holding his red static orb, which for me is R1 on my controller, but whatever you have it bound to, this is how you build up, or this will just do basic ice damage instead of the glaciation buildup. We want to actually go into the quick draw stance via holding dodge for the glaciation team. So I'm going to show how this works. If we just hold the static orb, and let me get my input viewer up. Apologies, I forgot about that. There we go. So if I actually hold dodge to go into the stance and start firing off here, you'll see no glaciation is being built up. We're building up our core passive and doing ice damage, but we built basically no glaciation stacks. So make sure instead of holding the red orb down to do the quick draw, you are holding dodge. So same thing, bring Wanshi in, 3-ping, but this time I hold dodge, and now you'll see after 6 shots, we have 10 glaciation stacks built. That is the maximum. That means whenever you activate the glaciation effect, you are going to have the maximum timer allocated to it. In this case, every stack is effectively 1 second on the timer. So at max stacks, you will get 10 seconds of glaciation time to work with for the effect to be active. However, that's not actually true anymore because Helentine is here to save the day, and she actually is able to extend the timer. We'll get to that in a moment. But the way we actually proc and activate the glaciation effect is by Wanshi firing off his ultimate. So once you get it online, you do his ultimate, and you will see now the congelation has started and the timer begins to tick down. We have the area of effect going on for the glaciation. The ice spikes are active, so all your glaciation skills now do glaciation damage. So that is step 1 in the process. After that, we are going to pass off to Helentine, and I will show how she works. She is very similar to her lightning setup. So once again, 6 shots, ultimate to activate, and then we're going to bring Helentine on. Helentine operates almost identical to her lightning setup. but I want to get to an ultimate very quickly to kind of show you how things work. So Helentine's first ultimate does not do anything with the timer, but her second ultimate, as you can see, has refilled the gauge by 4 seconds. With Helentine's ability to spam her ultimate, even without deadline timing, you still get to do 2 full rotations, which is 4 ultimates, 2 of them being the secondary ultimate. That effectively means you are getting an extra 8 seconds of glaciation time. This basically means that when you are doing the highest investment level, where Helentine is SS3 with deadline timing, you are able to do 3 full rotations with her in the amplifier window with the effect active, and still keep it fully active for Selena to come on and finish off what is left of the timer. So Helentine very much is the linchpin and is the only reason this element is worth running again. She has completely changed the game in both making it much easier to do. The old Glaciation team, you had to be very, very on point with Wanshi's quick draws and his ultimates, and very on point with your rotation on Selena. Otherwise, you would run out of Glaciation timer before she got her ultimate off, and that was basically donezo. The rotation's so bricked you can't save it at that point. We don't really have to worry about that anymore. This is much more user-friendly. There is much more wiggle room for error. You're not going to miss out on a ton of damage if you slightly biff your rotation, because Helentine just gives us way, way more time to work with. So one more time, Wanshi comes on. We're going to build up the Glaciation stacks, activate it. I'll bring Helentine on. We'll do a couple ult rotations just to show how much you can get in. So I'm going to do a very basic one to start. We'll go over the real rotations in that section. So ult again. Do one more for funsies. You'll see, because of all the time stop and the additional ult stacking, the Glaciation timer is basically at max for when Selena comes on the field. This means Selena could come on, do her basic rotation, and have all the time in the world to get the effect off. Now, before I finish this off, I do want to go over something here. Because of her new Harmonization 2.0 on her weapon, Selena now has a slightly different rotation, where instead of doing concert orbs first, we want to actually do hold dodge first, then spam the concert orbs after, and do our ultimate. This increases all the overall damage. And you will note, once Selena does her ultimate, the Glaciation effect is going to expire, and this is where we would go ahead, go back to Wanshi, hand things off, and start the entire process over again. So it is not a difficult elemental effect to understand in terms of how you utilize it, but it was very annoying to play prior to Helentine's arrival. It is now very, very comfortable to play. As long as you hit the investment thresholds with this team, it is very, very user-friendly, and again, you have way more wiggle room than we had in the past to operate with this. So all in all, I am very pleased with what they did with Helentine to make this elemental effect a lot less annoying to work with. Things like old Plasma Beam and old Glaciation were honestly, more often than not worth their time, because they were so strict and so difficult to get your ultimates off in time without losing a ton of damage, that more often than not, the other option in your Warzone was just a better way to go. So thankfully, Helentine has changed all of that and made this team much more straightforward to play. And this is basically all I really need to show you for the combat demonstration. There's not a lot else to talk about outside of the rotation specifics. Once you understand that Wanshi builds the effect, activates it, Helentine and Selena use the effect timer to get the most damage in, and then you just repeat the process from there. That's it. That's the entire concept of playing Glaciation with the updated team composition. So with all that taken care of, let's go ahead and not waste any more time and get over to our rotation options. I'll have a couple different rotations based on if you have deadline timing for Helentine or not, and I'll have a couple alternatives depending on if you have Wanshi at SSS or not, to accommodate for the increased swap timer if he's below SSS. So let's head over and start taking a look at those. Quick note, the rotation video examples are going to be in the actual Warzone, not in the training mode. The reason for that is that Helentine does so much damage. She has a bad habit of killing the training dummy in a single rotation, and oftentimes what happens is the next training dummy spawns all the way back in the center of the stage, and things just stop hitting, so your signature energy doesn't build right, and things get all out of whack in training mode. So we're going to do actual live gameplay examples for the videos this time. That does mean there's going to be a lot more visual noise and stuff, so I apologize for that, but it's the only way to really show how this works without the rotations modestly bricking themselves thanks to the enemy not being in range. So with that, let's go ahead and start taking a look at some sample rotations. All right, so let's go over a couple sample rotations I have set up for the new Glaciation team. There are going to be two main rotations I'm going to discuss here, and they both are mostly going to center around Helentine's changes, which are, do you have deadline timing or do you not? This first one we're going to show double S3 Helentine without deadline timing, and then the other one will be with deadline timing. I'm going to go over some different things that you may have to alter slightly with these rotations depending on your investment levels, but rather than doing like 5 different rotation sections to account for every minor change that happens depending on if character A or B is at a different evolution rank, I'm just going to touch on them within these two rotations, and I'll put notes in the rotation annotations for what you'll need to change if you have a different investment level. This is mostly going to change based on whether or not you have Wanshi at triple S, because at triple S you get the tank passive where your swap cooldown is lowered by 3 seconds, so if your Wanshi is below triple S, you'll need to make some minor adjustments to fill in the downtime between the characters' rotations, but again, it's not super hard to do, and it's not worth doing different rotations for each and individual section depending on investment. Other thing I want to note, as always, I'm not telling you these are the absolute min-maxiest pure optimal rotations for these investments, but these are what are getting me really good returns in the warzone versus other people of similar investment, so I feel comfortable in sharing these, as these are rotations that will do the job for you just fine. There will always be new optimizations and minor things found as higher end players figure out what they're doing with the absolute min-maxiest stuff. If that's something that interests you, I definitely recommend checking out the creators and the players who upload very high-end Warzone runs for that kind of information. I am much more focused on the generalization and just getting you good and competent with the team. So let's go ahead and start talking about the rotation. There's going to be some notes on Selena as well. I'll get to it as we get through her. So for double S3 Helentine with no deadline timing, you basically don't have to change anything of any of the rotations except for one minor thing with Wanshi. These rotations will be the same throughout the entire run of the Warzone. So we start with Selena so we can swap to Wanshi and only use a single 3-ping to get to his quick draw stance. If we have Wanshi as the starter, then you have to burn 2 3-pings, and if you're not running DLT, that puts you in a situation where you can have orb RNG or other nonsense happen, so it's just easier to start with Selena and immediately swap to Wanshi. So pretty straightforward. You throw a single 3-ping, go into the quick draw stance by holding dodge so we can start building Glaciation stacks, get to our full 10 and ultimate as soon as it's available. I do want to note that if you are in a war zone with a single boss enemy, and even sometimes in the other war zones, but most commonly this happens when it's a single boss, sometimes you will kill the enemy so quick that one of the shots effectively does not register, and this can delay your ultimate being online, so you might have to spam a couple extra shots. If this happens, I recommend just resetting and starting over. You're literally 4 seconds into the run. It doesn't happen often, but I do want to note that this is a thing that can happen, especially with less enemies on the field. So if you're starting this rotation and you're like, Clage, I don't have ultimate after 6 shots, that's why. Sometimes the enemy just dies too quick, and then you end up with missing a shot and it doesn't register for signature energy. Minor annoyance, but it's not terribly hard to work around. And once you're past the initial waves of the run, this won't be a problem anymore. Wanshi is not going to be killing stuff outright with his red shots once you're in the double-digit waves. So, but Wanshi gets the glaciation effect online, and then we are going to swap over to Helentine. So Helentine's rotations are basically carte blanche identical to her lightning rotations. There is only one minor change you really need to make when you are playing for her playing her in Glaciation, and that is anytime you use her static orb, her greenish color orb, after using either a blue 3-ping or a yellow 3-ping. So when she is in her base stance and you use one of the 3-pings and then tap the static orb to swap stances and go into the red orbs, make sure you hold the static orb instead of tapping it. The reason for this is if you hold the static orb and there are enough of the Arctic layers built up in the Glaciation elemental effect, this will cause the ice spikes to trigger an extra time. This is not a major thing. If you forget to hold the orb, it is not going to magically make the rest of the rotation not do Glaciation damage. It's just something you can do automatically so that if you have the Arctic layers built up, Helentine just triggers an extra ice spike and you get a little bit of bonus damage as you're doing the base rotation. Other than that, her rotation can basically act the exact same way you've been doing her lightning rotation, depending on what your investment level is. So Helentine comes on the field, we immediately hold dodge to force proc matrix and get ourselves a 3-ping. We do whatever 3-ping is available into the static orb. Do note, I forgot to hold on a couple of these, so you're going to see my input viewer only tap the orb. Just remember to hold if it's after a blue or yellow 3-ping. Again, it is not make or break for the rotation, but it is just free damage if you have enough Arctic layers built up. In the first rotation, I'm almost positive we don't get to 10 Arctic layers, but it's just a good habit to get into so that anytime that bonus damage is on the table, you'll just proc it automatically. From here, we're going to go into the red stance. We're going to do 2 red 3-pings, tap the static orb. This will get our first set of ultimates online. So Ult 1 into Ult 2. Ult 2 will refresh the Glaciation timer. And then from here, we're just going to repeat the same process. Our next ping counts as a 3-ping no matter what, even without matrix due to Helentine's passive. So we go ahead, tap. This will bring the static orb online. Hold the static orb because, again, it's after a yellow or blue 3-ping. This gets us back into the reds, and we're going to do 2 red 3-pings again, tap the static orb, and do 2 more ultimates. This is basically Helentine's entire rotation for the entirety of the Warzone. You can just do this exact rotation on repeat for the rest of the run, and you will get very solid damage since you can't fit in a third ultimate rotation without deadline timing. So from here, we pass off to Selena. Now, I am doing my Selena triple S rotation. If your Selena is below triple S, so double S3, as again, if your Selena is double S0 or you don't have her signature weapon, I do not recommend running her. Run Teddy in her place, do Teddy's single rotation, and then swap back to Wanshi as soon as he's available, and you'll be fine. But if you are running Selena, basically, some things have changed with her Harmonization 2.0. The biggest change is that when you bring her on the field, you still do the exact same thing. You come in, do a 3-ping, hold basic to consume some more orbs, and get her first ultimate online. The big difference with Selena moving forward is that now, with Harmonization level 2 on her weapon, using the blue orb is something you want to do regardless of your investment level. In the past, many players below triple S did not use the blue orb because it's a very long animation that is not cancelable, and below triple S, it does not return very good damage for the amount of time that animation takes. However, with Harmony 2.0, now, using the blue orb increases her next ultimate, like her actual full ultimate, whether it's the actual Big Flower ultimate or the regular final ultimate if she has the noise debuff. It improves the damage on that by 100%. It is just straight up a double damage if you have used the blue orb prior to using your second ultimate. So no matter what your investment level is, you need to fit in a blue orb before you use your ultimate because that is too much damage to pass up. And Selena's ultimate is where most of the glaciation damage happens outside of her core passive. So how I do this is same as the normal triple S rotation. We do get it through the first ultimate, immediately blue orb out of the first ultimate. Now, here's the other major change with Harmony level 2. With Harmony level 2, it is now much, much more lucrative to do the concert orbs after you hold dodge for her core passive that summons all the clones that dash at the enemy and do a bunch of damage. The reason for this is the concert orbs have always done more damage if you hit them after the core passive. However, prior to Harmony level 2, you would have to wait for Selena to float back down to the ground after her core passive animation before you could proc the concert orbs. Now, you can start proccing these immediately after the core passive ends, and Selena just rapid drops to the ground. So instead of doing a couple concert orbs before the core passive, now we do the core passive first, then spam concert orbs. There is a weird quirk with this, however. If you've been playing a Triple S Selena, you probably know that with the old rotation, you needed to just hit 2 concert orbs, then hold core passive, and that would get you to a full gauge here to do the full flower ultimate, her bigger ultimate. For whatever reason, using the concert orbs with the Harmony level 2 change, where you're allowed to hit them right out of the core passive, requires you to use 4 of these to get a full gauge and get the flower ultimate. So this is a notable change from her base rotation. Instead of only needing 2 concert orbs, you got to ping 4, and you do them after the core passive instead of before. So what that looks like is the core passive goes off, and then we just start spamming the concert orbs. As soon as you see 4 are used, you'll have enough gauge to use her flower ultimate. We let the ultimate rip. This terminates the glaciation effect, and now we can swap back to Wanshi and repeat the rotation from there. So the important thing to note now as an aside for Wanshi, if he is below Triple S, you will not be able to just do 6 more shots and do ultimate and have Helentine be able to come back on the field. She will have 3 extra seconds still of downtime before she can come on the field, and you do not want to proc the glaciation effect too early. It's not, again, going to be a big deal if you do this because she refills the glaciation timer herself, but to fix that downtime there will be if you don't have the Triple S swap cooldown passive, instead of doing 6 red shots for the rest of Wanshi's rotation, just do a full 12 instead. Or if you want, you could do his alternate quick draw where he goes into the air dashes and spins around shooting rapidly. That is also an option as a way to build the stacks, but I recommend just doing 6 shots every single rotation if Wanshi's Triple S. If Wanshi is below Triple S, do 12 red shots for his second rotation on as your way to proc glaciation. So in my example, since mine's Triple S, I'm just firing the 6 red shots, building 10 stacks of glaciation, and ulting immediately. But if you're below Triple S, just do 12 red shots instead. That will fix your lack of downtime here. With Wanshi, you can also go ahead and do an extra 3 ping, because even with the Triple S passive, if you've done these rotations as quickly as possible, there's still going to be a very slight downtime before Helen can come back on the field. So I just spam a 3 ping, and from here, Helentine comes back in, repeats her exact same rotation, Selena repeats her rotation, and you go till the warzone is over from there. So this is basically your entire rotation if you are running Helentine without deadline timing, but she's at least double S3. So all of that covered. Let's go ahead, go through it in real time. I will commentate the actual inputs with my voice, put the annotations off to the side like normal so you can practice. And again, I'll put a little disclaimer for things to alter if you need to. If the Triple S rotation for Selena doesn't work for you at double S3, just use whatever you've been using with double S3, making sure you fit a blue orb in and get to your ultimate as quick as possible. It's going to work just fine. Selena basically just needs to get to the flower ultimate and get it off before the glaciation effect ends, and you will get what you want out of this rotation. So, new glaciation team rotation with Helentine at double S3, but without deadline timing. Swap to Wanshi, 3 ping, hold dodge, 6 red shots. Ultimate. Swap to Helentine. Hold dodge, 3 ping, hold the static orb, 2 red 3 pings, tap the static orb, ult 1, ult 2. Any 3 ping of a regular orb into hold static orb, 2 more red 3 pings, static orb 1 more time, ult 1, ult 2. Swap to Selena. Any 3 ping into hold basic, ultimate 1, Blue orb immediately out of ultimate 1. Hold dodge. Ping 4 concert orbs. Ultimate. Swap back to Wanshi. 6 red shots, or if your Wanshi is below triple S, 12 red shots instead. Ultimate. Do a 3 ping to kill downtime. Swap back to Helen. Repeat the rotations from there. There is your SS3 with no deadline timing rotation for Helentine. Again, this will not get you the maximum scores, but it will get you very solid returns. And again, you might have to make minor alterations to your Selena rotation if your Selena is not triple S, or if you are running Teddy, just do enough of her ultimate rotation to fill the downtime to get back to Wanshi and repeat the entire process from there. So with that covered, let's take a look at the more optimized rotation with DLT that'll allow Helentine to do a triple ult rotation once she has gone through one time in the order. All right, so let's go over what changes when you are able to put a deadline timing resonance on Helentine and enable her triple ult rotations. Everything else is basically going to be identical. It's just that now you will have less downtime to fill since Helentine will be on the field for a little bit longer doing a triple ultimate rotation. And of course, you're getting the extra damage from doing 2 more ultimates and all that good stuff. So this is going to be, again, almost identical to Helentine's Lightning triple ultimate rotation or 6 ult rotation if you want to count the total number of ults. But other than that, very little changes. Wanshi and Selena are still going to operate exactly the same way, where Wanshi is going to do 6 red shots and then ult and get off the field, or 12 red shots if he is below triple S. There is also a minor optimization you can do with Wanshi where every 5th rotation you can do his air dash ultimate for a little bit of extra damage. I personally don't think it's worth it because it's one more thing to keep track of, and it's just way simpler to bring him on, fire the 6 red shots, proc Glaciation, and get off the field. Whatever you want to do, there are minor optimizations there. I'm not going to use them in this particular rotation because, one, I would have to record like 4 or 5 full team rotations in, and I just didn't want to do that. And 2, it's so minor because, again, Wanshi is not here to do damage. He is the stack builder in the tank shred. That's basically all he does. But let's go ahead and go through this so you can see how this works. So, same thing. Wanshi comes on, 6 red shots, ultimate to get the glaciation effect online. Now, the caveat that's a little different from the Lightning team here is that because we need to start with Wanshi and get Glaciation procced immediately and then get to Helentine, even with deadline timing, you're actually not going to build enough orbs for her to do a triple ult rotation on her very first rotation. You will essentially fall exactly 1 red orb short of being able to do an opener triple rotation. And again, that's because she has to come on the field sooner for this team than she does with the Lightning team. The Lightning team, you can delay a little bit by going into live first and then swapping the Helentine. This gives deadline timing enough time to produce some extra orbs and give her enough of them to do a triple ult rotation out of the gate. In this team, we're just going to do the double ult rotation at the start, then move over into doing triple ult rotations for everything thereafter. So I do a modification on her first rotation here because since we have more orb economy to play with, we don't need to use the static orb as much. So the big difference here is after you do your hold dodge, proc the matrix, use your 3 ping into the hold static orb for the glaciation proc. When we go into the red orbs, instead of doing multiple red orbs into static on the second round, we're going to do a red orb dodge red orb. The first part is identical. This is basically exactly the same as the SS3 without deadline timing. We go through our 2 ultimates. We ping the 3 ping out of the second ultimate, hold down the static orb. And now here, instead of going red 3 ping static orb, we're going to do red dodge red. And this saves a little bit of time and just gets the rotation moving around a little bit faster. If you want to clear up this little bit of downtime here that Selena has, you can go ahead and do red static orb instead. And if your Wanshi is below triple S, I definitely recommend going ahead and doing red static orb just to be to fill more downtime, because again, you will have 3 seconds more of gap to fill with Selena coming on the field. In my case, I just do this a little bit quicker to make sure I'm getting everything off in time, and Selena's going to come on the field exactly as she's off cooldown. What I tend to do is just burn another 3 ping here to fill in the downtime with a red 3 ping, and then Selena's ready to come on the field. So there are a lot of ways to make a minor adjustment here. Feel free to do some alterations and testing. This is just what's been most comfortable for me for Helen's setup rotation, but there's a lot of ways to go about this, so just keep that in mind. I'm not telling you this is the absolute ultimate way to do it. As always, there's going to be minor optimizations you can find in other ways, but once Selena comes on the field, she does the exact same rotation as before. Something I do want to mention is since she is doing single ult rotations, do note that every second rotation, you're not going to get the flower ultimate because of her noise debuff. Whenever the flower ultimate is done, you get 2 stacks of the noise debuff for Selena, which prevents her from using the flower ultimate. One of those stacks is cleared every time you use the other ultimate, and another stack is cleared anytime Selena is swapped off the field. So since she's doing single ultimates every single other time she comes back on the field, you will not have the flower ultimate available because you'll still have a stack of the noise debuff to clear. But otherwise, her rotation is identical. It does not change just because Helentine has deadline timing. Then from here, we go to Wanshi once again, hit a 3 ping, go into the stance, 6 red shots. Again, if Wanshi is below triple S, do 12 red shots instead to clear the downtime on Helentine. In this case, with 6 red shots, you will have a little bit of a gap left, so just spam a couple 3 pings. This will make it so you don't have to spam as many orbs moving forward with Wanshi, and you can just go into the gun stance if you want. Just basically gives you, again, more wiggle room to work with, so you're not trying to overextend and end up not bringing Helentine on the field as soon as she's available. Now, for Helentine's triple ultimate rotation, this will be exactly the same for the rest of the run. You will have enough orbs to do this every single time for the duration of the Warzone run. So we start off exactly the same. Hold dodge, use your 3 ping, and then hold the static orb down to get to the red orbs. From here, we're going to do a red 3 ping and then immediately ult. Make sure you don't use the static orb after this red 3 ping, because we want to come back out of the second ultimate into the red orb stance, not the yellow and blue orb stance. If you use the static orb, that's going to cause it to swap back stances before you ultimate, and then you're going to end up back in the yellow and blue stance. So it's just red 3 ping and immediately ultimate. So ult 1 goes off, ult 2 goes off. This refreshes the timer on the Glaciation, so we have a full grip to work with. And from here, out of this, we're going to do 3 red 3 pings for the full 3 ping combo, then tap the static orb and ultimate again. So ult 1, ult 2, this refreshes the timer yet again. From here, any 3 ping available into hold the static orb for the Glaciation proc. And then from here, you're going to do red dodge red. That'll get you enough for your third set of ultimates. And as you can see, still just enough time to get both of these ultimates off within the amplifier buff window. So you're set to go there. So ultimate 1. Ultimate 2. And then you can swap back to Selena. From here, this repeats for the rest of the Warzone in its entirety. Selena does her single ult, swap back to Wanshi, fire your 6 red shots, run Helen's triple ultimate rotation, and go until you run out of time in the Warzone. Pretty straightforward from there. So, let's go through it in real time. I will commentate the annotations again. I will put notes for alterations if you have certain characters at different investment levels, but this will be a good baseline for you to be able to do Helen's triple ultimate rotation. So, double S3 Helentine Glaciation rotation with deadline timing equipped. Swap to Wanshi, 3 ping, hold dodge, 6 red shots. Ultimate, proc the Glaciation effect, swap to Helentine. Hold dodge, 3 ping, hold the static orb, red 3 ping, tap static orb, ultimate 1. Ultimate 2. Any 3 ping into hold static orb. Red 3 ping, dodge red 3 ping, ult 1. Ult 2. Burn a 3-ping if you want. Selena comes on. 3-ping, hold basic, ultimate. Blue orb. Hold dodge. 4 concert orbs to build to the full ultimate. Let the flower ultimate rip. Swap back to Wancha. 3-ping, 6 red shots. 12 red shots if you are below triple S with Wancha to fill in the downtime. Out of the ultimate, waste a couple 3-pings. Helen comes on, hold dodge for Matrix. 3-ping, tap the static orb. 1 red 3-ping, ultimate immediately. Don't use the static orb after the 3-ping. Ult 2. 3 red 3-pings into tap static orb. Ult 1. Ult 2. Any 3-ping out of the ultimate into hold static orb. Red 3-ping dodge, red 3-ping, ultimate. Ultimate 2. Swap to Selena. Repeat the rotation from there for the rest of the run, and you should come out of the Glaciation Warzone with a pretty stacked score, all things considered. So, those are the 2 main rotation variations I have for you today. Again, there are going to be minor optimizations and alterations you can do depending on your investment levels, what you have for your Selena, what you have for your Wancha. But in general, as long as you are getting the triple ultimate rotations out of Helentine and getting Selena on the field to do her ultimate before the glaciation effect runs out, and with Helentine that is incredibly easy to do, you're going to be getting the most out of this general effect and getting good scores returned for you. So with those all wrapped up, let's go ahead, get out of these reviews and go wrap up this guide. All right, so that will put a wrap on the updated Glaciation team. This team comes with a lot of pros and a couple notable cons. The biggest con, of course, being, again, that like the other elemental effects, the investment requirements are pretty high. Thankfully, they're pretty high on multiple characters that are free to obtain, which definitely helps. But nonetheless, this is still one of those where you simply cannot run a team of SS0 characters and expect this effect to perform very well. The big problem is that without Helentine being able to ult multiple times in a rotation, you end up with a lot of downtime where either A, you have no ability to bring your next character on the field because you haven't been able to spend enough time in a rotation to get through the swap cooldown, or B, you're just not utilizing the glaciation timer well enough to get a good amount of damage out of the effect. So as long as Helentine is there and built and meeting her investment threshold of double S3, then you're pretty much good to run this team. It will perform fine even if you don't have Selena at the high investment or you're running a double amplifier composition. As long as Wancha can build stacks and Helen can use them, you have a functioning glaciation team, and it is now an option for you when it comes up in the Warzone. But again, with the elemental effects, they tend to be much less flexible when it comes to overall build options for the teams, just because there's so few characters that have any given elemental effect, and oftentimes there's a very specific type of gameplay loop the devs have in mind for these elemental effects, and they're pretty hard to replicate without the working parts. So that said, the changes that Helentine brings makes this element not cancerous to play anymore, and I'm very thankful for that. Glaciation was one of my most hated elemental effects when it would come up back when it first became a meta pick, mostly because unlike Ultima Slash, it wasn't brutally inconsistent. It was just annoying enough that it was very easy to trip up your rotation and have to start from scratch, but it never felt like it was one of those rotations that was that executionally demanding at the same time. So it always felt like, oh, well, I just flubbed and I'm bad. And it's a much different type of frustration than the type there was with like Plasma Beam and Ultima Slash, where you're just like, well, I hope my execution's on point enough to get this to work, otherwise I'm gonna have a sad. But all of that is gone now. Glaciation is very comfy to play. It is very easy to get the maximum damage out of a given rotation. As long as you know how these characters play at base level, you can do the Glaciation rotations. They're pretty straightforward, and I definitely think this is a marked improvement for an elemental effect that basically fallen completely off the map. I would argue that going into this patch, Glaciation was the elemental effect far and away in the worst spot. You could maybe argue Radiance, I guess, but Radiance comes up so infrequently, I haven't even bothered doing a guide for it yet. So, you know, take that for what it is. Nonetheless, we have a functioning Glaciation squad again. It is something you can build over time and get to. And again, if you're a newer player, don't stress trying to get this team built immediately. There are so few stages where Glaciation matters. This is very a niche thing, and this is something you can put off for a long time if you don't have your base elemental teams built first. So don't feel the need to rush out and do this. I just wanted to do the updated guide because, once again, it's finally a viable element, and it's always nice to know how to pilot said element once it's a choice worth having in the Warzone. But that's going to do it for this one. I will be back with some more videos during the patch. I intend to do a video on Nanami's Leap, and again, a video that's going to talk about Selena's Harmony 2.0. It's not going to be super different from what I talked about in this video, but I do want to talk more about the concept of that mechanic as opposed to what it does just for Selena itself, because I have some opinions, and we'll get to those when I make that video. But for now, I'm going to call this good and get out of my hot office yet again so I don't have to be in here without the fans running. So as always, I appreciate you all. Thank you for all the feedback and support on all my videos. If you have any questions, if anything didn't make sense, if you know of some optimizations I might have missed in these rotations, as always, feel free to let me know those down in the comments. I feel pretty comfortable that with Helentine's rotations getting hashed out for the Lightning team and those rotations basically working one-to-one with very minor alterations for the Glaciation team, that these should be pretty good for just about anyone looking to just have competent scores in Warzone. But if you know of any super hyper optimizations or neat meta stuff I might miss, feel free to let me know down in the comments. And yeah, that's going to do it. So as always, appreciate you all. Y'all take care. Be good to one another. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.